So let's unpack the markets and the movements of the markets with portfolio manager at Laurium Capital, Brian Thomas. A very good morning to you, Brian. A tough close to the trading day on Wednesday. Are market participants concerned about the interest rates remaining higher for much longer in the United States?
Yes, I think that is a central concern for market participants at the moment, and one has to understand why these interest rates are staying higher for longer in the US. And it's actually because economic data is looking reasonably good in the US at the moment, and because economic data is looking reasonably good, it's likely that inflation will continue to be reasonably high, and as a result, rates in the US, the interest rate set by the Federal Open Market Committee, the Fed as we call it, is likely to stay higher. And with that staying higher, it pushes bonds higher, the yield on bonds higher. And remember, bonds are the price of money in the market. And when the price of money goes up, it's more expensive to borrow money, which puts pressure on the economy.
Let's expand on that a bit. You're talking about the general currency weakness and the outlook in the short term. What is it looking like in the short term? You've spoken about the pressures in currency.
Yeah, well, there's a bit of pressure on the rand, it seems, but one needs to look at it in the context of the global marketplace in which the rand plays. If you look at the dollar has strengthened about 7% since mid-July against its basket of trading currencies, and the rand has weakened around 9%. So we beat ourselves up quite a lot about it's the rand that's weakening. But in reality, it's actually the dollar that has been strengthening. And the reason the dollar has been strengthening is exactly what I was talking about earlier, is that the rates in the US are higher than they have been for a while. And as a result, people are putting money into dollars to save in dollars to take advantage of the higher rates. So it's the dollar that has strengthened rather than the rand that has weakened.
Let's look at the oil prices. They have dropped quite a bit, but there are concerns that supply cuts are not enough to compensate for the slower global economic growth. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so the oil price has dropped about 10% since the start of the month, which is a big drop. But in reality, if you look at it, it's basically back to where it was at the beginning of September. So not as dramatic as one might feel. But let's remember that the oil-producing nations are obviously incentivized to keep the oil price up. It impacts their own economies. I think that the drop in the oil price over the last few days has been really as a result of the demand side of things, both out of Asia and out of the US. The US is just finishing their summer and have just finished their driving season, and as a result, demand is starting to pull back. But the price will really be dependent on the supply side response of various oil-producing nations.
Let's take a look at FirstRand for a moment. They're set to get their first woman CEO. What are your thoughts on the leadership change there and where she can potentially unlock new opportunities for FirstRand?
Yes, FirstRand's been exceptional over time at rotating skill through their management ranks. And promoting skill to the CEO, and then the CEO often moves on to become chairman, etc. So Mary Vilakazi has a very good track record. She comes from the insurance side of the business, and we're confident that her, together with the other leadership changes that were made at FirstRand yesterday, will drive value for FirstRand over time.
Now, Mondi, which, as we know, is a South African company originally, but what they have done, they are headquartered in the United Kingdom, but they've wrapped up their final exit from Russia. Shareholders are going to be walking away with a pretty penny, but this also speaks to doing business in Russia going forward. What does this infer?
So it's good to see Mondi realizing value. They actually bought these assets when Mondi was still part of Anglo American way back at the first 20% in 1987, and then the balance in 2002. And now they've been able to realize value for these assets. It's roughly 7% of the market cap of Mondi that'll come back to shareholders. Russia itself is still a difficult place to do business. I mean, let's remember that the reason that they've sold is because they had to sell because they can't do business in Russia. But it has been good to see them realizing value and being able to get the money out and be able to use that money. But it's still very difficult to do business in Russia from here.
The Public Investment Corporation is increasing its investment in unlisted companies as companies continue to delist from the local bourse. Is there still value to be unlocked on the JSE, and why the exodus?
Look, if you look at the companies that have left the JSE, most of them have been medium to small size companies. If you look at the trading volume that takes place across the JSE at the moment, it's a lot higher than it was, say, 2 or 3 or 5 years ago. So even though there has been an exodus of some of these smaller companies, there's still good value that is traded on the JSE. We as a house think that there is considerable value in the South African component of the JSE. And yes, there is value to still be unlocked. Let's remember that the Public Investment Corporation is the biggest investor in the market and owns probably more than 10% of most of the companies on the JSE. It's not necessarily that they're selling out of those, they're just funding some of the smaller companies that are not listed at this point.
Thank you so much for your insight this morning. That was Portfolio Manager at Laurium Capital, Brian Thomas, giving us a rundown of all the top business stories, not only in South Africa, but globally as well.